Okay, now we're going to make a Basil Cremeux, which is like a enriched creme anglaise that's set with some gelatin. We're going to use that as the center of another dessert. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take the milk and put it in the pot. Turn the heat on maybe. And I want to heat that with the salt, which I've mixed into my sugar, and half of the sugar. That's going to prevent the milk from burning. And then I want to take the egg yolks and the remaining sugar and combine those two together. Remember not to mix your egg yolks and sugar until your cream or milk excuse me, is heating. We don't want the egg yolks to dry out from the sugar. So I'm going to mix those two together. Before you get started, you also need to bloom your gelatin in cold water. So just put your gelatin sheets in some cold water. And you also need some basil puree. So my basil puree, I just blended, like I blanched some basil for 2 quick seconds, and then I pureed it with a tiny bit of simple syrup just to get a little bit of a puree. Okay, here we go. My milk is hot already. So I'm going to temper that in to the egg yolks, just a little bit at a time. Just to make sure I don't cook the eggs. But you can see there's a lot of egg yolks here for such a tiny amount of milk. That's because we're trying to make it super rich. Okay, so I'm just going to give that a really good stir around. And now I'm going to put it back on the heat. And remember, when we're making creme anglaise, we need to keep stirring constantly. And we want this one to come to between maybe 75 and 80 degrees Celsius. So I'm looking for steam and the mixture to thicken. I have a strainer ready to go. And my thermometer ready to go. Okay, so back on the heat. And remember, stir constantly to make sure you're not cooking the eggs. And I would do this maybe over a medium-high heat. I don't know that I would go right to the top. It's such a small amount that you want to be careful to not overcook it. And it's not going to take very long because it's such a small amount. So already I'm at 65, and I'm going for 75 to 80 Celsius, not over 80. So probably at around 76 or so, I'm going to pull it off. There we go. I'm there already. So I'm going to pour that through. I want to just tap out anything that didn't make it through, which is a little bit of egg. Now, I want to stir in my gelatin while it's nice and hot. So I'm just going to pull the sheets out that I bloomed in the cold water. Squeeze out as much liquid as you can. Pop those in. Give that a stir, let it dissolve. And then we want to add about 5 grams of vanilla bean paste. That's just around a teaspoon, so I'm just going to eyeball it. It's just a little splash of vanilla bean paste. And then I also want to stir in my basil puree. My basil puree isn't super smooth. I only had a few basil leaves in a really big blender. So it's better if you can pack the blender with leaves, you'll get a finer grind. Last thing I want to do is I want to put it into our mold. So I have my mold ready to go here, and I've put it on a tray so that when I go to pick it up, it's not flexing on me and I'm not spilling. So we're just going to fill these right to the top. I like to use a measuring cup to do it, but you can use a piping bag or a spoon. You'll have maybe a little bit left over, but you only need 12 molds. And in fact, you probably really only need 6, but let's fill 12. And we're going to put those in the freezer and we'll come back to them another time.